There is a symbol on every American dollar bill that most people have seen thousands of times but never truly looked at. An unfinished pyramid, 13 levels of stone, each representing one of the original colonies. And floating above it, an eye, the eye of Providence, watching. Below it, in Latin, Novus Ordo Seclorum, New Order of the Ages. These symbols have been on American currency since 1935. A sitting president approved them. His name was Franklin D. Roosevelt. He was a Freemason, 32nd degree. The man who proposed them was Henry Wallace, also a Freemason. The artist who finalized the design, Gutzon Borglum, the same man who carved Mount Rushmore, was a Freemason. 3 Freemasons decided what goes on the currency of the most powerful nation in the world. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is documented history. The real question is what else they decided. Because for 250 years, a secret brotherhood has operated at the highest levels of government, science, and culture. They built Washington, D.C. from the ground up. They shaped the American Revolution. They spread across every continent. At their peak, 1 in 5 American presidents was a member, and today, most people couldn't name a single one of them. This is the story of the Freemasons, what they actually did, what they actually believe, and what is actually true. In 1390, a document was written in England called the Regius Manuscript. It is the oldest known Masonic text in the world. It describes the duties of stonemasons, men who build cathedrals, castles, and the great stone structures of medieval Europe. These men held something no one else had: secret knowledge. The geometry needed to construct a Gothic arch, the mathematics behind the flying buttress. In a world where most people could not read, a man who could calculate load-bearing tolerances was extraordinarily powerful. To protect that knowledge and their monopoly on it, stonemason guilds created initiation rituals, secret handshakes, passwords, symbols, a way to identify a genuine craftsman in any city in Europe without papers or credentials. By the 17th century, the great cathedrals were built. The guilds had no more stone to lay, so they did something unexpected. They opened their doors to men who had never lifted a chisel: lawyers, philosophers, merchants, men of influence who wanted access to the network. In 1717, in a London tavern called the Goose and Gridiron, 4 of these lodges met and founded the Grand Lodge of England. It was the birth of modern Freemasonry, no longer a guild of builders, but a brotherhood of thinkers. The timing was not accidental. 1717 was the height of the European Enlightenment. Across the continent, men were questioning kings, churches, and the divine right of rulers. The Freemasons gave these men a private space to do exactly that, outside the reach of the church, outside the reach of the crown. Within 50 years, lodges had spread to France, Germany, Italy, Russia, and America. The ideas discussed inside those lodges, liberty, equality, the separation of church and state, would ignite 3 revolutions. On April 30, 1789, George Washington was inaugurated as the first President of the United States. He took his oath of office on a Masonic Bible. He was wearing a Masonic apron. His lodge had assembled to watch. Washington was not a casual member. He was worshipful master of his lodge in Alexandria, Virginia. When he laid the cornerstone of the United States Capitol in 1793, he did it in full Masonic regalia, apron, sash, and jewel, in a formal Masonic ceremony documented in contemporary newspapers. He was not alone. Benjamin Franklin was Grand Master of the Pennsylvania Grand Lodge. He recruited members in Paris during the negotiations for French support in the Revolutionary War, using Masonic connections to build alliances. The Marquis de Lafayette, who brought the French army to Yorktown and turned the tide of the war, was a Freemason. Paul Revere, the man who rode through the night to warn the colonists, was not just a silversmith. He was Grand Master of the Massachusetts Grand Lodge. Of the 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence, historians have confirmed at least 9 were Freemasons. Of the 39 men who signed the Constitution, at least 13. Of the first 14 presidents, 9 were documented members. This was not coincidence. Freemasonry was the network that bound the American Revolution together. The lodges were places where men from different colonies, different professions, different religions could meet as equals under a shared framework of ritual and obligation. They trusted each other because of that framework. The American founding was not a Masonic conspiracy, but it was impossible without the Masonic network. In 1791, Pierre Charles L'Enfant was hired to design the new capital of the United States. He was not a Freemason, but the man who revised his plan and oversaw its implementation, Andrew Ellicott, was. For 2 centuries, people have looked at the street map of Washington, D.C. and seen Masonic symbols: a compass, a square, a pentagram, the lines connecting the major monuments forming geometric shapes that appear deliberate. Some of this is pareidolia, the human tendency to find patterns in randomness. The pentagram in the street grid is incomplete, its top point running into the White House grounds, a fact that conspiracy theorists rarely mention. But some of it is real. The Washington Monument stands at 555 feet, the tallest masonry structure in the world when completed in 1884. Its cornerstone was laid in a Masonic ceremony. Its capstone, placed at the very top, bears the words Laus Deo, praise be to God. The building is a giant obelisk, an ancient Egyptian symbol of immortality and enlightenment, adopted by Freemasons and placed at the center of the American capital. And then there is the dollar bill. The Eye of Providence above the pyramid was not originally a Masonic symbol. It appeared in Christian art for centuries before Freemasonry existed. But Masons adopted it, used it extensively, and it appears on lodge ceilings and documents across America. When 3 Freemasons placed it on the currency in 1935, they were not hiding a message, they were displaying one, openly, to anyone who knew the language. Most people didn't. Most people still don't. By 1900, Freemasonry was the largest fraternal organization in the Western world. In the United States alone, there were 3 million members. In Britain, the Grand Lodge had over 8,000 affiliated lodges. In France, the Grand Orient counted cabinet ministers, generals, and presidents among its ranks. To understand what this meant in practice, if you were a businessman in 1890 and wanted a bank loan, having the right handshake could determine whether you got it. If you were a lawyer wanting clients, the lodge was where they were found. If you were a military officer wanting promotion, being known as a brother to your superiors mattered in ways that were never written down. This was not a conspiracy, it was a network, and networks have power. The 19th century also produced Freemasonry's most controversial moment. In 1826, a former Mason named William Morgan announced he was going to publish a book exposing Masonic rituals. Before it could be published, Morgan was kidnapped. He was never seen again. The response was not what the Masons expected. A national scandal erupted. The Anti-Masonic Party was founded in 1828, the first third party in American political history. It won gubernatorial elections in Vermont and Pennsylvania. It sent members to Congress. Its entire platform was the abolition of Freemasonry. The party collapsed within a decade. Morgan's book was published anyway. The rituals it revealed were underwhelming. Elaborate, theatrical, full of symbolism, but not sinister. The scandal taught the Masons something they would never forget. Secrecy creates suspicion. What people imagine is always worse than the reality. If Freemasonry is a shadow government controlling the world, it has a strange history of being persecuted by every major authoritarian power of the last 3 centuries. The Catholic Church has issued more than a dozen papal bulls condemning Freemasonry. The first, In Eminenti, was issued in 1738, just 21 years after the Grand Lodge was founded. The most recent reaffirmation came in 1983. Catholic Freemasons remain automatically excommunicated to this day. Napoleon initially relied on French Masons as revolutionary allies. He eventually turned against them when the lodges became centers of political opposition, appointing his brother Joseph as Grand Master to bring them under state control. In the 20th century, the persecution became systematic and murderous. In Nazi Germany, Freemasonry was classified as a threat to the state. The Gestapo compiled lists of lodge members. An estimated 80,000 to 200,000 Freemasons were sent to concentration camps, identified by a downward-pointing red triangle on their uniforms. Temples were seized. Records were destroyed. An entire generation of European Masonry was annihilated. In Soviet Russia, lodges were banned by 1922. In Fascist Italy, Mussolini dissolved all lodges in 1925. In Franco's Spain, membership was punishable by death. The pattern is consistent. Every totalitarian regime of the 20th century considered Freemasonry an enemy, not because Masons were planning world domination, but because their lodges created private spaces for free thought outside the control of the state. For totalitarians, that alone was sufficient reason. In 1797, a Scottish author named John Robison published a book titled Proofs of a conspiracy. His argument: the Freemasons, working with a group called the Illuminati, had orchestrated the French Revolution and were planning to destroy Christianity and all monarchies in Europe. The Illuminati had been real, founded in 1776 in Bavaria by a professor named Adam Weishaupt. The Order of the Illuminati promoted Enlightenment values: rationalism, anti-clericalism, opposition to superstition. At its peak, it had perhaps 2,000 members. It was dissolved by the Bavarian government in 1785. It ceased to exist 11 years before Robison published his book. But the idea was too powerful to die. Robison's theory was reprinted, expanded, and mutated across 2 centuries. The Illuminati became synonymous with Freemasonry, then with a Jewish world conspiracy, then with a satanic elite, then, in the 21st century, with celebrities and politicians who allegedly control governments, banks, and media from the shadows. The QAnon movement, which emerged in 2017, is in many ways the direct descendant of Robison's 1797 pamphlet. The names have changed, the structure has not. The evidence for Masonic world control is consistently the same. Symbols on buildings, handshakes in photographs, membership lists that overlap with lists of powerful people. The problem with this evidence is that it proves exactly what Freemasonry openly admits to being: a brotherhood of influential men who help each other, not a shadow government, not a satanic cult. The gap between what Freemasonry actually is and what conspiracy theorists claim it to be is, in its own way, the most interesting thing about it. In 1960, there were 4 million Freemasons in the United States. Today, there are fewer than 1 million, and the number falls every year. The average age of an American Mason is now over 60. Lodges that once met in grand temples are selling their buildings to developers. In some cities, lodges that once had hundreds of members have merged just to survive, meeting in rented rooms with aging men who remember when the order meant something different. What happened? The network became obsolete. In 1890, the lodge was where connections were made, contracts were signed, social bonds were formed between men who had few other ways to find each other. In 2025, that function is served by LinkedIn, by industry associations, by alumni networks, organizations that don't require learning elaborate rituals or spending evenings in a lodge room reciting 18th century passwords. The secrecy that once made Freemasonry exclusive now makes it seem strange. The rituals that once felt profound to men with fewer forms of entertainment and less access to philosophy now feel theatrical. The charitable work Masons do, hospitals, scholarships, disaster relief, is done more visibly and with less ceremony by other organizations. The Freemasons helped build the modern world. Then the modern world moved on without them. So what is actually true? The Freemasons are a real secret society. Their rituals are real. Their historical network is real. Their influence on the founding of the United States is real and documented. They helped design Washington, D.C., fund the American Revolution, and shape the intellectual framework of the Enlightenment. Their symbols are on the currency, carved into monuments, built into the layout of cities. None of this required a hidden conspiracy. It required a brotherhood of influential men who shared a framework of trust and a set of values: reason, liberty, the dignity of the individual, who, at a particular moment in history, happened to be in the right places to act on those values. Were they a shadow government? No. Were they sometimes corrupt, exclusionary, complicit in the injustices of their time? Yes. They excluded women for most of their history. They reinforced existing power structures as often as they challenged them. But the most powerful thing Freemasonry built was not the capital or the monuments or the currency. It was something more fragile: the idea that men of different religions, different nationalities, different professions could sit together as equals, bound by shared values and mutual obligation, in a world that usually kept them apart. For a time, that idea helped change the world. The unfinished pyramid on the dollar bill is not a message about who controls the world. It is a statement about a project that is never finished, a society always under construction. Whether the builders are worthy of the architecture, that has always been the real question.